Hey, so today we're gonna be making a parts manager script, which is gonna allow the user to select the parts of their car that they like and modify them. And it's also gonna save it so that whenever the user closes the application, it's gonna get saved. So as you can see here, I have modified my car a bit. Let me add some skirts as well. And now that I'm gonna pause the Unity and I'm gonna start again, it's gonna be saved and our car is now complete. Okay, so what we have here is a really simple scene that contains our car with the car control disabled and a camera with a simple script which I've called the gross camera that basically allows the user to rotate the camera around the car so it can look around and see if it likes anything. And yeah, in general, look at the car. So what we want to do here, we want to start creating the buttons so that we can actually change the parts. So we're gonna create a button here, here, etc. So to do this, what we're gonna do is create a new canvas, but in order to be able to actually use it with our car, we're gonna change it from render mode to screen space to world space, which means that basically now the UI buttons are gonna be in the real world and we can put it in the car so we can center it. So let's center it a bit. Okay. And we can create a new button now. So we're gonna create a new button. Here, button. And as you can see, there's a huge button. So we're gonna obviously make this a bit smaller, like this. We're also gonna make it square, so 160 and 160 here. We're gonna make this smaller, still smaller. I think this should be good. We're gonna also remove the text, so we remove this, and now we change the graphic from this button to our gear graphic, image, to our gear graphic. Perfect. So we now put it where we want it. So we put it somewhere around here, the car. Wait, let's see how this looks. Okay, okay, this is a bit too big. So what we're gonna do is make it a bit smaller. Rotate a bit around. Yeah, okay, this should be good. We're gonna call it front bumper. And we're gonna do the exact same thing for the other. See what's behind it. And rear. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so now that we have the buttons, we can actually test if this works. So let's see if they're clickable. Let me make this a bit bigger so that you can see. Yep, this looks good. Okay, so as you can see, the button is clickable. As you can see, it's a bit gray when I click it. So yeah, that works. So next thing we're gonna do is create the menu for when we select a part, so that it shows for the next part, the previous part, and if we want to select the part or not. So to do that, we create a new canvas, which we're gonna call, I don't know, canvas. And we're gonna create a new panel. This should be our panel here. It's a bit too big, so this should be around here. We're gonna also create a new button. Yep, here's the button. Let's make it a bit bigger and let's call it select button. And we're gonna change this text to select. And we can also change the asset of the font, how it looks. This looks pretty decent, I think. We can move it a bit down, I guess. All right. So we're gonna also create the left and right button. So this is good. This is good. And let's actually get the arrow. So here I googled arrow ASCII key, so we can go here, we can click this, it got copied, and now we can go to this button here, and we can paste the text like this. Let's make it a bit better. Yep, that's good. And let's do the exact same for the left. Perfect. Yeah, right, this should be good. Think this is good, yeah. Okay, let's create also a back button. Perfect. Okay, so now we have the select, the left, right button, and the go back. So now we want a way so that when we press the gear icon, our camera moves inside the car and looks at the port, and that we fade in between the gears and this panel. So let's disable this for now. And let's create a script for this thing here. So to do this, we're gonna go on its gear here, and we're gonna create a new script which we're gonna call gear, well, part gear, I guess. So we open it, and here we have a new script. Okay, so this parts gear here, we're gonna have to access our camera. So we're gonna have a private camera, I guess. Or just a transfer, maybe. Okay, so here we're gonna want to access our garage camera script. So to do this, we create a new garage camera variable, and we access it by actually finding the camera with find object of type. So find object of type garage camera, and what we do now is create a new public void, so that when we click the gear, we can actually send to the garage camera that we've clicked the X item. So public void select item, and we're gonna go into our garage camera, and we're gonna create a new function which we're gonna call look at. So we're gonna go back to our garage camera, and here we're gonna create a new public void which we're gonna call look at. It's gonna take a string which is gonna be the part name, and it's gonna basically change the mode of our camera. So what we're gonna do is have two modes, one that orbits the car and one that basically looks at the port. So to know which mode we're in, we're gonna create a public enumerator. So public enumerator, I think it is, we're gonna call it camera state. And it's gonna have two states. It's gonna be basically orbiting and looking at. Perfect. We're gonna have to make this, yep, add semicolon. And so now we create a new variable, which is gonna be our enumerator, camera state. And the default value should be the orbiting one. Perfect. So in the late update, we're gonna create a new switch statement. We're gonna add our state. And what we're gonna do here is say if we are on our orbiting function, then we do something. And if we are on the looking at function, we're gonna do something else. Okay, so we basically take all this code that we had before and we put this on the orbiting function. And what we're gonna do is basically change the looking at state of our camera. Okay, so what we're gonna be basically doing is having an object in which we're gonna be looking at, which we're gonna set this as a looking object, and we're gonna now change the camera's position to be near that object. So the transform dot position of the camera is gonna be equal to our vector3.lerp, which is gonna mean that we're gonna interpolate in between the two instances. So it's gonna be our transform dot position and our target. Oh, I should have named target then. And our target object. target object dot position. Target object dot transform dot position minus our actually we can make this transform instead. So transform. So target object dot position, and what we're gonna do is actually subtract the forward position, so that if we have the object here, we're gonna make it so that the camera goes here. So forward of it, and the camera goes in front of it, and it doesn't go on top of it. So this is gonna be target dot object dot forward. And we can actually create a float as well. That's gonna be our looking at distance. Which we're gonna say it's one floating point for now. And we're gonna do this for each frame. And we're gonna do this with, we're gonna multiply this with our dampening value, and just because I've tested this and it's a bit too big, we're gonna increase it with 0.5 I think, or 0.3. Let's go for 0.3, let's see how it goes. And we're gonna do the exact same thing for the rotation. So our rotation is gonna be equal to quaternion, so rotation values dot look rotation. Wait, sorry. We're gonna create a new variable, which is gonna be our target rotation, since we want to interpolate in between of these two. And then this is gonna be the look at rotation. So it's gonna look at the object immediately. So it's gonna be target object dot transform dot position minus our transform dot position. And we're gonna interpolate in between the two. So quaternion again dot slurp this time. So it's gonna be our transform dot rotation and our target rotation, and obviously damping times our time dot delta time times 0.6f, since this variable I found that works, and this should make it work. And so now if we have a target and we are at the state of looking at, we're gonna be looking at this. So now we need to basically change the look at function to actually change our target object to be equal to the object we're gonna pass. So we're gonna pass another object, which is gonna be look at. Perfect. And then the state of the camera should be equal to camera.state.looking at. So yeah, I think we don't need the string part name, so we're gonna remove this. And so that we can go back from the looking at state, I'm gonna add an if statement, so that if we get the escape key, escape, we're gonna change this rotation, the state, to be equal to orbiting again. So let's see how this works. This should be wrong here, since we need to pass as our transform as a variable. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so we go into our gear, and each of them we're gonna create a new on-click function. We're gonna put our gear and part gear and select item. Okay, so let's test this out and see how it works. So we are normally inside our camera, and let's see if I click this gear, what happens. Okay, so it goes perfectly to where we want to be. And now if I press escape, it goes back again. So this is perfect. So now what we want to do is actually show up the menu and remove the gears, and actually start working on the parts of the car. Okay, so what we're gonna be doing now is going into our canvas and creating a new script, which we're gonna call parts manager UI. Yep. Okay, so we open the script and there's obviously nothing. What we're gonna do before we open the script is, so we have this panel here. So if I enabled it, as you can see, there is this panel here. We can actually add a component which is called canvas group, And what this does, what this allows us to do is, wait. So what this allows us to do is basically change the alpha of the object so that we can fade in between these two. And we can do this exact same thing for this canvas here with our items. So we just need to add a panel. We're gonna delete the image aspect of it. And we're gonna put all these gears inside the panel. We're gonna call this gears. And we're gonna add the canvas group. Perfect. And now we go back to our Visual Studio. And we're gonna have a public canvas group. Which is gonna basically take our our gears canvas and our select item canvas. And what we want to do is create a new public void so that we can call this to go to select menu. And what we also want to do is create a function that allows us to fade in between two canvases. So to do this, we're gonna use an enumerator, which we're gonna call fade between, and it's gonna take two canvas groups, the enable and the disable. And what this is gonna do is basically allow us to wait for frames or seconds. That's what I enumerated. So you can yield, return, new, wait for something, wait for end of frame, wait for fixed seconds, wait for seconds, wait for seconds real time, wait until something, wait while, and there are a lot of other things that you can do with this. So with wait until the end of frame, that means that it's gonna do the next line of code every time a new frame appears. So we can use this to make an while loop that's gonna say while our enable is not enabled yet and while our disabled is not disabled yet, we're gonna keep changing the things. So we're gonna first of all enable the game object of the enable group. So this should be true. So we set this active and and we set the enable.alpha to be equal to 1, so we can start with our enable to equal to 0 and our disable to be equal to 1, so that we can fade in between them. And we can basically say that while our enable is.alpha is less than 1, and while our disable is bigger than 0, then what we're gonna do is change the alpha of the enable by increasing it by 0.01f, and the disable, we're gonna decrease it by the exact same amount, 0.01f. Perfect. And we're gonna put our yield return new wait for seconds, and this should fade in between two canvases. And so now we call this. Let me change the name because I have a capital E here. Okay, so now we call this with start coroutine, fade between, and it's gonna take two groups. So it's gonna, for when we go to select menu, we want the select canvas to be the enable and the gear canvas to be the disable. And so we can go into our parts gear now, and where we have select item, we can actually find object of type, and that's gonna be our parts manager UI, and we're gonna call the go to select menu function, and let's see how that plays out. I'm gonna disable this so at start doesn't show up, so panel disable, and let's see how this works. So right now we have, oh wait, I haven't enabled the So here in the canvas, I'm gonna put the gears canvas as a game object to our field. Okay, so let's see now. Okay, so this is normal, and now when I press the gear icon, and it fades in between the two. And when I go back, it doesn't change anything because I haven't added anything, but we can add this as well. So So we're gonna add a new public void, go back, which is gonna do the exact opposite of this thing. Oh wait, I need to put this on the parts manager, not the gear one. Okay, so we have a new function, go back, and it's gonna do the exact opposite of this. So it's gonna take our start coroutine instead of, and we're gonna swap the two items around. Perfect. So we just need to call this. So in our garage camera, when we press escape, we also call it. So we call this by finding the object and calling the function. So let's see how this works now. All right, so this is the car, and I press this and it goes perfect. I press this and it enables the gears. So that's perfect. Okay, so next thing we're gonna be doing is actually creating our parts manager. So we're gonna go into our car and we're gonna create a new script, which we're gonna call parts manager. Perfect. And we're gonna open it. So what we have with parts, we want to differentiate in between the categories. So what we're gonna do is create an object, which is gonna be a part, a class that's gonna be a part. And then that's gonna be parented by another class that's gonna be the parts type. And then we're gonna have an array of part type classes. So to do this, we go outside our class and we create, and we say that it's system serializable, so we can actually say it. And it's gonna be our public class, which we're gonna call parts, right? Parts type. And it's gonna basically have a public string, which is gonna be the parts name, the part name. So this should not be, this should be part. And it's gonna have a public integer, which is gonna be our selected part. And now we create a new class. It's gonna be our part. And this is just gonna house our game object arrays. So this is gonna be called parts objects. And inside our part type, we're gonna have an array of parts. Perfect. So now we create a new array of part type. That's hard to say it a lot of times. So part type array, which we're gonna call part types. Okay, I should be more creative with the names, I think. So what we're gonna do now is creating public functions that the other objects are gonna be able to access, so that we can set our parts. So we're gonna create a new function, which we're gonna call set part from index. It's gonna take a part type, which we're gonna call part type, and an integer, which is gonna be our select integer. And what we're gonna be doing basically is disabling all the objects except the one we want to enable. So we're gonna loop through the array. So we're gonna do this for each part there is, and we're gonna disable all the game objects that exist. So game object gp in part type dot parts dot I dot part object. Perfect. And now, if the current object we are on the loop is equal to the select, we enable it. So game object dot set active equals true. True. And our part selected. What? Our part type, sorry, dot selected is equal to our select. And what we can also do is actually keep track of what parts we have selected in the past. So we can set player prefs, which basically is using these ways of saving integer, and set the integer, which we're gonna call part plus the name of the part. So part type dot name, and we're gonna set this to our select. Perfect. And we're gonna do an else. If nothing of this works, we're gonna have a set active to false. So we're gonna disable it. Now what another function we're gonna need is one that we give it the part name and it gives us our part type. So get part type. So we're gonna give it our part name. This should be a void. And so we're basically gonna loop through the exact same parts like this, but this time this should be this, and yeah, we just get the length of this, and we check if the part types dot name that we're at is equal to our part name, and if it is, we return that. So return part types dot I else. Oh wait, we also need to set this to return a part type and not a void. And if all else fails, we're gonna return null. And we're gonna also create. I pressed something weird. And we're also gonna send a log, or we're gonna set a warning to the user that we cannot find the port. So part name could not be found. Perfect. So the final function we're gonna need is create a function which we give it the ID that we want, so what part we want, and the name of the part. So we want the third bumper and we want to select that, we're gonna give it front bumper, for example, and then 3, and it's gonna give us our third bumper. So we're gonna create yet another function, public void set part from name, I guess. Oops, I pressed page down. Set part from name. We're gonna give it a string, part name, and an int, which we're gonna select. And basically, we're gonna get the part with the get part type. So let's change this to capital P, so that we're correct. And so we create a new part type, temp part. We're gonna call it temp part, and we're basically gonna call the get part function with our string, which is gonna be our part name, and this should give us our part. After that, if it gives us something that's not equal, if it's null, we want to return and throw an error probably. And if it doesn't return, which means our part is not equal to null, then we loop through the parts. So we do the exact same thing we did here. So I'll just copy paste it. And instead of part type, we're gonna have the temp part. Oops. This should be select here. Perfect. And I think I've lost the parentheses. Yep. Perfect. So now that we have all our functions, one last thing that is missing is actually set all the parts that we had selected in the previous gameplay and set it at the start. So we're gonna create our final function, which we're gonna call set all parts. It's not gonna take any arguments, and it's basically gonna loop through all the part types in our part types object, and it's gonna get the player pref. So selected item is gonna be equal to our player prefs dot get int. So we're gonna get the integer we saved here, and we're gonna take exactly this, and instead of part type we have set as pt, and this is a default value, and the default value is obviously 0. And then we set the part from id, so our part, so we call this function here and we set it the pt as the part, and the select is gonna be our selected item. Perfect. So here, what we want to do is go into our parts manager in here, and as let me put this a bit higher. Can I? I can. Okay, there is. Okay, here. And now, as you can see, there is a list with 0 part types. So since we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're gonna set this to 5. And each part is gonna have a part name. So front bumper, and it's gonna have a selected, which is nothing. And I think I messed up something because we cannot see the part here. And that's because I didn't use system serializable. So we put this over our part like this, and this should show us our part array. So let's see if this works. And of course it worked. So here we have our parts, and based on our different parts of our car, so here we have bumper 1, bumper 2, etc. We're gonna have 3 objects here. So we're gonna put 3 here, and we're gonna input our front bumper. We're gonna put this on the next one for our second bumper, and we're gonna do this for the third. And we do this for the other parts. For the wheels, we're gonna actually put multiple parts into our parts object. So we're gonna put each wheel, so 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna put all of them inside our parts object, so that it enables and disables all of them. And we do the exact same thing for the second rim. So we go here, 1, 2, 3, 4. For our spoiler, since we don't want the first selected item to be a spoiler, so we don't want to have a spoiler, we're just gonna leave this object to 0, and we're just gonna start putting our spoilers on the second element. So we go to our spoilers and like this. Okay, so after we have set up all the parts, we're gonna go back into our script, and we're gonna go into our start function, and we're gonna call our set all parts function. And this should be, and when we press play now, this should remove this front bumper and give us the stock, and it should also fix the wheels. So let's see if this works, and perfect, our car is stock now. So the final thing we want to do is actually set up this menu here, so that when we have the menu, it actually clicks and we can change the part. So let's do this. Okay, so we're gonna go back into our script, our parts manager script. And now that we have set up our parts manager, we're gonna have it parts manager. We're gonna have it into our script, and we're gonna get it by, and we're gonna get it by finding the object that has the parts manager script. And now we're gonna go into the go to select menu, and what we want to do now is enable or disable the next or go back button, change the text of the select, and give us the information we need to know about what we have selected and how many items there are. So to do this, we're gonna have a text mesh pro for our selected item. So we're gonna be using text mesh pro. Oops. And we're gonna have a public text mesh pro .text file, and we're gonna call this select text. We're also gonna have a private int that's gonna be private. Well, we're gonna have a private int, which is gonna be our current selected item, which is gonna be equal to 0 start. We're also gonna have our a temporary selected item. So if we're showing an item, we want to be able to know what item we're saying. So temp selected, it's gonna also be 0. We're also gonna have a game object, is gonna be our next button, and another which is gonna be our previous one. And finally, we're gonna, no, I think this should be it. Oh, so we're also gonna have one so that we have a part type object, so that we know what items we have. Perfect. Okay, so now we're gonna go back to our go to select menu, and we're gonna change our select part, sorry, our part, how did I call it? Part type. Let's actually set it as select part. And we're gonna set this as our part manager dot get part type, and we're gonna input our string that we want. So we go back to our go to select menu, and we want to have a string that our gear presses. So this should be our part name, and here we pass this. And now we set the current selected item to be equal to our select part dot selected, and also our temp. Perfect. And now we want to enable or disable the left or right button. So our previous button dot set active should be equal to if the temp selected item is bigger than 0. Then it should be true. And oh, I pressed send message instead of set active. And for our next button dot set active, it should be true only if our temp selected is less than our selected part dot how many parts we have -1. And finally, we're gonna set our selected text to selected, since the item we're showing first is the first selected item. And this should actually make us, at start we should disable the left button and enable the right one. But we also want a function that is gonna select the part. So we're gonna create a new function which we're gonna call change port. It's gonna take an int which we're gonna call move, public void, yep. And if we can move it, so we check this if the temp selected plus our move is bigger or equal to 0, and if our temp selected plus move is less than our parts, our select part dot parts dot length. And if this is true, then we set our temp selected to be equal to itself plus the move we have. So if we are going right, it's gonna be a +1. If we're going left, it's gonna be a -1. And we're gonna say to the parts manager to set the part from ID from select part, which is gonna be our selected part, and the temp selected, which is the item we have selected right now. We're also gonna check the exact same thing here if this is if the previous and next button should be allowed to move. And finally, we're gonna check if we have already selected the item, then so if the current selected item is equal to the temp selected item, then we can say that select text should be equal to selected. And if this is not true, obviously we want to allow the user to select it. Perfect. And finally, what we want to do is create another void, which we're gonna call select part. And what this is gonna basically do is set our current selected to be equal to our temp selected, and also change the text to be equal to the selected. Perfect. Finally, we're gonna change our go back to routine here. And what we're gonna do is when we go back, we want to revert any changes that were not selected. So we're gonna go into our select item, select part manager dot set part again. Wait. Select part dot set what? I think I've messed up something here. Oh, I have it as part manager. Sorry. Part manager dot select. That's weird. Wait. So here on the move, we have used it, I think. Yeah, we have used it. I don't know why it doesn't show up on my editor. That's weird. And we're gonna set this as the current selected. And finally, we can set the camera to be equal to be in the orbiting mode and not into the looking at item mode. So our garage camera dot state. Yeah, I think my editor has a problem here. Dot I think I have named garage camera. Wait, let me see, because my editor doesn't work for some reason. Yep. Okay, so parts here. Yeah, okay. Find object of type garage. Yeah, I don't know why this works. Oh, okay, so I have set the state as inaccessible. So we go back to our camera and we set the state to be equal to be a public into the private field. So after this long marathon of code, we finally go back into our editor. And what we're gonna do now is go into our parts manager script and we're gonna set up the parts. So we have here the select item. I think this is the left one. This should be the right one. I hope at least. And these two should be private. So we go back into our parts manager. And this should be private. And so should this. Perfect. Okay. So we have this. This is the left one, right one, and back button. And we're gonna go into our onClick for each of these buttons. We're gonna create a new onClick event. And it's basically gonna take our canvas, our parts manager, and it's gonna do something. So for our back, we're gonna have it to go back. For our right, we're gonna have it to change, I think I have called it, or not. Wait, it should be here, but it's not. I'm actually not sure if the Unity window is looking perfectly. So wait, public void change part, okay. So this should be a change part, and it's not. Okay, so the problem why it's not showing up probably is because we had an error in parts gear. Basically for every gear we have, we want to have a string that's gonna correspond to our part name, and it's gonna correspond to what the gear changed actually. So we should add this to our part gear, and let's see if this fixes it. Okay, so going back into our left button, yeah, this fixes it. Wait, let me see if you can see it. So we go into here and we go into the change part, and the right should be 1, and we're gonna do the exact same thing for the left one. So change part should be -1, and the select should be the select. Perfect. So let's see how this works. But before we see if this works, we basically need to go back into our car and into our gears and actually change the part name. So for the front bumper, we're gonna name it front bumper, and it should be identical to how we sent it here. So if this contains a space, which I would like not to, it should be exactly like this. So we should copy paste it. And so here, when we go into our front bumper, we set this, wheels, skirt, etc. Skirt, rear bumper, and it should be identical. I repeat, like if it's not identical, it's not gonna work, since it's gonna be looking for an object that doesn't exist. So let's see if I have named them correctly. Wheel, skirt, rear bumper, spoiler. Okay. Okay, so let's see. We have our car here. It's lagging because I'm recording, but so we go into our object, and now, oh yeah, perfect. So as you can see here, this that's selected, it shows that selected, and I can select this, and I can go back. It didn't go into our orbiting mode for some reason, but as you can see, if I stop it and re-enable it, it should have the correct bumper, and it does, which is great. So as you noticed, for some reason it doesn't enable or disable the objects. So I think this is because I probably, yeah. So instead of the next button, I enabled the wrong thing. I set the text of it, which will not be the case, it should be the game object. And also inside of Visual Studio, here in our Parts Manager, when we press back, we want it to be orbiting and not looking at. And I think this should work. So let's see if this works. Perfect, we have our saved bumper, and let's change the wheels. So we go into our wheels, let me see if you guys can see it. Actually, I can increase this size, yeah, perfect. So we're gonna select this wheel here, and perfect, it's selected. So if I go into the skirt, and let's say I'm looking, oh, I have probably messed up the name here. Let's go to the rear bumper. Still messed up. Okay, so I have messed up the naming a bit of the object. So instead of rear bumper, I had it set at skirt. So this should be rear bumper, this should be the skirt, and this should be the spoiler. Okay, so let's finally test this out. I hope there's no more problem. So we're gonna go into our front bumper. For some reason, this should not be showing, so I should change this. So let's select this. If we go into our wheels and press left, but, oh, sorry, I just realized you guys cannot see the go back button. Wait, yeah, this will work. Okay, so we have our go back here, and if I press the go back, it should, yeah, okay, so as you can see, the wheels stay the same. So if I go to our skirt, I can select this, go back, and stays the same. It stays at the selected, but if I change it and go back, it goes back to the selected one. Same thing with the bumper, normal selected bumper, and now I can select this. Perfect. The only thing we need to fix real quick is this should not be showing, so we're gonna go into our Visual Studio, and here where we have the next button, I think the problem is that, so this is active when the temp selected is less than the part length -1. I think this, yeah, so this is part's name. I mistyped that, and because it's a string, it doesn't throw an error. So let's see, this should fix it. But yeah, as you can see, it's keeping the items we have saved before that. So let's have this bumper, and as you can see, this button got removed, so that's perfect. So we have the wheels, and everything is customizable now, and it's awesome. So yeah, this is the video. Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it, and take care.